Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you with the conclusion of a thrilling race at Circuit of the Americas, where we find out what the T in COTA stands for, and that is Trackhouse. As Ross Chastain gets Team Trackhouse's first victory, Ross his own first Cup Series victory. And after a great run by Suarez in the early laps, I think it was a fine showing for both teams. And then, of course, the climax of which being his win. And now, not to say that there aren't going to be some sore feelings about it. Certainly, A.J. Allmendinger and Alex Bowman both had a fantastic shot at it at the end, and were putting on a good show in their own right. But still, a fantastic showing there, and really showing the potential of this next-gen car in the road course race here. So we'll be talking about, of course, the Cup Series race to kind of lead things off here and go into the Xfinity and the Truck Series race. As always, we'll be talking about the last place finishers of all three races. It was not a good weekend to be driving a white car, as was the situation in all three races here so far. And really kind of a crazy situation there. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in here tonight. Let's get right into it. Ross Chastain, a driver who was your last place finisher in this year's Daytona 500, wasn't sure at that time period, even then, what was going to be happening with that team. But certainly their top five streak coming into this one, with Suarez continuing to have some good runs here and there, of course, nearly pulling off the first victory for Trackhouse just at Fontana not too long ago. But then, of course, you get down to the road course here. Chastain was very good in this race last year with Chip Ganassi Racing. And this time comes out here with the Trackhouse effort. After Suarez's tire failure, after the bit of contact over in turn one, Chastain seemed to be taking over the controls for a good part of the distance after that. It seemed like his car in particular was getting really good off of turn two, even when we got multiple restarts in the later stages. With the exception of the one where Tyler Reddick was starting to work around him there before that very quick caution for the incident with Kurt Busch and Kyle Larson and so forth. But it's, I think right off the bat, you look at Chastain's career. It's no surprise that his first win would come in such an aggressive manner, given the nature of how he'd raced in the past. He's had some races where it seemed like in the Xfinity series in particular that he could just win the race outright, as he was going to do at Darlington when he was driving for Chip Ganassi, and then when he finally did break through in Las Vegas. But in the Cup Series, he's had to be a bit more methodical here. He's had some mistakes along the way. Of course, the race at Daytona, where he had just a dive bomb into the first corner, eliminated several drivers in that sense. But then having some solid runs. Just last year at Darlington in the Southern 500, it seemed like he was going to break the McDonald's curse even before Bubba Wallace did. You got to say, I mean, again, for a driver that's been plugging away at it for a while, who has had a very, circuitous path to getting into the Cup Series here, seeing him break through with his first victory, especially after such a recent string of strong finishes, that's got to be a huge validation, not just for himself, but for that team as well. So congratulations to him. Again, pending post-race inspection, of course, and there's, no shortage of a controversy from one end to the other. Of course, the course-cutting incidents during all three of the races this weekend ended up being kind of a big thrust of all this, but we'll certainly talk about that too. Thank you, Age Gale. Hello as well from Australia there. Thank you for tuning in here as well. Thank you also for the super chat there, Michael Jensen. Congrats to Chastain. I see nothing wrong with the move because AJ knocked him off course first. Good days for both Front Row Motorsports cars, as well as both Petty GMS cars, especially Ty Dillon with another top 20. Absolutely. I think, when you get down to trying to win your first race, I think it could be excused a bit if, a driver is going to be particularly aggressive with it. And again, it's not like, Chastain backed into this one. He was thoroughly dominant in this race once Suarez had his problems there and was able to kind of really put together a fine showing there. When I was tweeting after the race, I couldn't help but think of, I remember reading some sports psychology books when I was in college. And one of them, described like being able to be in a close competition like that And, understanding that winning is not a normal thing. It's not, having the opportunity to win is very rare, and that winning is rarer still. But when you're in a close competition, one way to think about it is, don't let those other guys get away with your trophy. And I am absolutely sure that that was what was going through Chastain's mind when Allmendinger and Bowman were swarming him there at the end, especially when Allmendinger seemed to kind of check up in front of the one and almost kind of give a position where Bowman could get by. I think probably the first priority was going to be just to get around the 16 car there, and then Bowman became kind of collateral damage in the middle of that too. But it shouldn't take away from the fine runs that both of them had out there, especially when you consider the fact that Allmendinger is not eligible for Cup Series points by declaring for full season Xfinity, that he is just in there for wins. And, and again, they did win this weekend as well by taking the win in Saturday's race there too. So Kaulig Racing does not leave this weekend empty-handed, although certainly a Cup Series race being as prestigious as it is, and given how meaningful it was for them when they won the Indy road course race last year, you certainly can't blame them for being disappointed. But that's a consequence of it. You can only have one winner out there, and these guys are going to be as competitive as possible, especially this year. And if you get the slightest bit of momentum with this new car and with this new setup and this new season, I don't think you can really blame any of these drivers for looking to capitalize on that. And I think Trackhouse, with Chastain in particular, have done a fantastic job of doing that, even at radically different tracks. When looking at his top 5 streak coming into this, I was kind of thinking that his first win was going to happen at Oval, given the fact that he'd done so well on these. But, and then, of course, with Cota, so many things were up in the air about, how it was going to race versus last year when you had the rain and you really didn't get a good sense of even how the Gen 6 car was performing at it. Now you got a completely different car, completely different weather. You're basically coming out here for the first time. Again, it kind of reminded me a lot of like Heartland Park, Topeka, in terms of a road course put out in kind of a large spread out area with plenty of like runoff areas and so forth there and the long straightaways. But I mean that in a positive way. I think that really kind of lent itself to some very aggressive racing out there. Only some of which we actually got a good way to see it there too. But yeah, fantastic job for Chastain though. I think that's got to be really exciting for him and his fans. Cool to see him smash the melon at the starting line there, and he's probably, I mean, I don't know, in terms of the longest streaks that we've been waiting for in terms of a driver to try to break through. Suarez, his teammate, and others out there trying to kind of get in there. But that was something kind of interesting to see how that all shook out. But yeah, certainly exciting to see there. Great effort for both the Trackhouse effort as well as Ross Chastain. And I think at this point, the floodgates are open. I wouldn't have expected, I fully expected Suarez was going to get his first win today, judging from how strong he had performed at the start of it. And although he did recover quite well, he was around 12th for that last restart. The unofficial results actually show him, oh gosh, did he lose a couple spots there at the end? Yes, it looks like he did. He dropped back to 24th and unofficially in the final results here, just behind Cole Custer. So something went sideways for him there towards the end. An unfortunate deal there, given how well he had been running in stage 1. Yeah, I fully expected Suarez to pull this off, which would have been impressive. Another thing you got to look at with Trackhouse is last year on the road courses, with perhaps the exception of Sears Point, they were consistently having so many problems on the road courses. In this same race last year, Suarez almost finished last with a mechanical failure that put him in the garage area. They were able to actually get back out there, and Justin Haley, who had a similar issue, wasn't able to, and he actually finished last in that event. Road America, same deal. Came under the bridge at one point, and the car just broke down, and just inexplicably. And I don't know what the issue was, or if it was just an issue, remaining with the Gen 6 car, whatever cars they were able to get. But I think this is a massive turnaround for that organization. To see them break through on a road course. And again, with their newest driver, who himself is not really known as being a big road course driver in any of his previous series as much. So, fantastic efforts by them for sure. But in the unofficial results here, again, Alex Bowman in the second spot, Christopher Bell in third, Chase Elliott fourth, Tyler Reddick in the fifth spot. Reddick had a good shot at the lead there for a bit. Ryan Blaney, your pole sitter, back in the sixth spot. Truex in seventh. Austin Cindric, who was my fantasy pick, incidentally, in the eighth spot. I really expected Cindric to do really well, given the fact that he had run so well in this race last year, even with the rain out there and being able to run on slick tires in the opening stages. And I figured if the car stayed in one piece, he'd have a really good shot at the win. Eighth place finish is not a bad run at all, but I expect him to be much more of a contender. Unfortunately, the car got away from him a couple times there, and that certainly didn't help. Eric Jones bounced back from his car stalling at one point to finish in the ninth spot. Austin Dillon unofficially rounding out your top 10 with Kevin Harvick just outside the top 10. Looking at the back of the field there, that's where the subtitle of this video kind of comes into play. Cutting the course was a big issue, especially in the S's. It certainly was a bit of a controversy in the Xfinity race, a bit more even than the Truck Series race. But in the opening laps of today's race, it was a big problem for a lot of the road course ringers that were at the back of the field. And I still think it's fair to call them ringers, where maybe they're not replacing, big money teams so much. But I think these are still drivers that you don't typically see week to week running on the ovals. Kaz Grala, a bit of an exception there, because, of course, the money team, we saw them at the Daytona 500. But guys like Boris Said and Joey Hand, competitors like that, Andy Lally, of course, your last place finisher unofficially, seeing them out there, I think it's still fair to call them ringers, and I think that's more of a term of endearment. I don't think that's a pejorative so much. But unfortunately, a lot of them fell out of contention in the very early laps, or at least were threatened to about to lose a lap in the early stages by serving pass-through penalties. Andy Lally's actually because of inspection failures. He served his penalty. After that, we had Loris Hezemans, who was making his Cup debut for the Team Hesburgh effort there, the number 27. Good to see them back in action for the first time since Daytona. Apparently, they're going to be focusing on the road courses continuing on this season. Hezemans, unfortunately, his car stalled towards the end of the race, finished the race 7 laps down. The first car off the lead lap, Allmendinger, actually after his spin, ended up the last car on the lead lap there, dropping back from 9/10 back of the lead on the last lap to 33rd in the finishing results. So again, can't blame Colleague Racing for being upset about that, but they were absolutely in it today, and they were the second best car out there and the biggest challenge that Chastain had to face, and there's certainly no shame in that. But again, in the opening laps, cutting the course seemed like that was going to be a bigger factor in how the race was going to play out. Anticipating a lot of restarts, although we didn't get that many at the beginning. What was refreshing about this race, I felt in many senses, especially compared to Atlanta, is we could see the race actually play out a little bit. Even though the stages were so short, of course, being a road course, and the cautions with the stages, I think, still kind of screw that up a little bit. I think that it was interesting to see this play out. But at the same time, also, the drivers that served the pass-through penalties, both Loris Hezemans, when he cut the course by himself, didn't gain a spot. He argued his case a bit there, but he still served his penalty. And then Boris Said apparently had this happen a couple times, first of which being on lap 3, when he also cut the course and did not believe that he had done so, believing that he could drive off into the red-painted part of the corners. But unfortunately, that was not the case for him. Boris Said, actually, let's see, where is he in the results here? He still finished on the lead lap back in the 26th spot, just ahead of Cody Ware. Cody Ware was another contender for last place. It sounded like he was actually going to go to the garage area in the early laps, had a problem with a issue with the car trying to steer itself with the rear wheels, and then also had an issue with the steering itself being 20 degrees off. Cody Ware, however, did continue to fight that car around the track, finished on the lead lap in the 27th spot, actually 1 spot ahead of both Kyle Busch and 2 spots ahead of Kyle Larson. So, again, some big names that had a bit more trouble in this race, being able to kind of finish ahead of them. I think that was a decent salvaged effort. But right when it seemed like Cody was about to go to the garage area, Andy Lally's situation popped up. And this incident apparently wasn't caught on camera. The fact that Lally had tangled with Brad Keselowski out on the course somewhere, it caused apparently not enough damage to Keselowski to ruin his run. In fact, Keselowski is showing in the 14th position here unofficially. But unfortunately for Lally, it broke either the toe link or something in the, I believe the A-frame there on the suspension, They could not fix that. They tried taking the wheel off and taking a look at it, but they were pretty quick to reach the conclusion that it wasn't going to happen out there. So that was unfortunately the very short afternoon for Andy Lally, who this weekend still had a great broadcast out there on Saturday. I thought he did a fantastic job, as he has done before, as driver analyst there for the, I believe it was the Xfinity broadcast this weekend. So that was really good to hear. But unfortunately, unofficially, your 39th place finisher there, 78 car for the Live Fast Motorsports effort, finishing last. Bubba Wallace next to last after the wheel came off of his car. Just an unfortunate deal with that. I'm afraid there's going to be some pretty stiff penalties for that, given the precedent that's been set by both teams where the wheel simply comes off like that, or where the wheel seems to have failed in some manner. NASCAR has so far set the precedent that they are treating both of those the same way. This being a bit more of a clear example of the nut just coming off of the wheel afterwards, and then ends up with a 38th place finish. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. dropped a cylinder at one point, then stalled on the track, finishing in 37th. Corey LaJoie also stalled on the track at another point, finished in 36th. And Joey Hand, mentioning him among the road course ringers, completing the group there in the 35th spot, showing 9 laps down at the finish. Rounding out your bottom 5, that team trying to come back from some fender damage earlier in the weekend to get that car rebuilt and ready to go, but they end up a bit further back in the lineup there. But I think this is a race that I was really particularly looking forward to with an next-gen car, and I sense the drivers were kind of looking forward to it as well. I think that a lot of the designs and upgrades that were made to the next-gen car were with road courses in mind, knowing that they're no longer 2 dates a year and you just kind of put Al Unser in the car and then just hope for the best. Now it is very much a sizable portion of the schedule, and indeed even a presence in the postseason, or the playoffs rather, when you have the Charlotte Roval factored into it. This is something where, we're seeing drivers really get into it, and the margin between the drivers that really struggle at it and the ones that are doing well is now so narrow that you can now have scenarios where it used to be unthinkable that you could have a first-time winner in a Cup Series road course. Now you have a situation where a guy that isn't even believed to be a good road course driver can pull it off, and I think that's just as much a credit to the Trackhouse team as it is to the car itself. I was also encouraged that it didn't seem like there were any particular issues with cockpit heat. I know that's going to be particularly more of an issue once we get into the summer months here, but it sounded like it was a very warm weekend in Austin this weekend. But however, it wasn't a particularly dangerous situation for any drivers in that case. So that was good to see. Hopefully there was a different situation there where we can find out more information on that coming up here. Andy Lally did trucks. Okay, no, thank you, Death Killer. Yeah, so there you go. So it was that one at the same time. Thank you, Jonathan, for jumping in here in the chat as well. Welcome back on here. Let's see. So let's go back. Oh, my goodness. Thank you for the super chats here. Let me jump on these here as well. Beast of Metal, let me get yours here first. For some reason, I thought Chastain had more last place finishes during his time with Jay Robinson, but only the one that time at Bristol in 2018. Crazy how these days weren't really that long ago, though. Exactly. I mean, I think this is one of the best things, one of the things I love the most about following these drivers from one week to the next, or at least chronicling them, either in the entry list storylines or when you see them do well, is when you place it in the context of just that long ago. As Beast of Metal pointed out, it wasn't that long ago that Chastain was running an unsponsored car for Jay Robinson at Bristol, and I believe in that one he even ran pretty well. I think he had a top 10, I believe, at Daytona, or pretty close to it that year, and was having some fine showings. Unfortunately, of course, a limited budget effort, it's going to really constrain how well you're able to perform. But yeah, it just shows, he's had a fascinating track through the sport. Not everybody is able to just get a Joe Gibbs deal right out the box and get into, ARCA, Trucks, Xfinity, and then you're in a top flight Cup Series ride. And sometimes even those who do, like Suarez, they've had to kind of work their way back and kind of rebuild their careers at Trackhouse and do as well as they've been doing. So there's other competitors there. So yes, when you place any of these wins in greater context, that has to be a huge accomplishment. And yeah, you have to look at also at the same time, gosh, we've had 3 first-time winners in the first 6 races. Astounding. This is getting back to like 2011 kind of numbers, where you had Trevor Bayne and guys like that winning it so earlier in the part of the season there. Just tremendous. And you still got guys like Tyler Reddick that are very close to getting their first win. I mean, again, Reddick could have just as easily pulled it off here. And then you have a whole other group of drivers that you expect to not just be winners, but multi-time winners that still haven't. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson. Or actually, no, not Kyle Larson. Larson's already won. I had to kind of sneak a peek there. Yeah. So yeah, there you go. Of course you wanted Fontana. But see, there you go. It's other competitors, Joey Logano, throwing that one in there too. Competitors that are really having to kind of work their way in there. So I think that, I think it is still a little bit too early to jump onto the bandwagon that we're going to have more than 16 winners by the cutoff in the playoffs. I think we had kind of similar feelings at some point last year. Then you had a driver like Kyle Larson just figure it out and win as many races as he did, and it kind of changed the complexion of that. I mean, every season has that potential, even if you have this new car or not. 2007, when you had the car tomorrow phased in, you had Hendrick Motorsports winning most of those races. And in 2008, when it was full-time, almost all the wins the entire season, even into the playoffs, were either Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, or Jimmy Johnson, and everybody else was just picking with the chickens whatever wins they can get. This is definitely playing out as a very different scenario than that so far, but I'll be interested to see how much longer we can keep going with it. You could just easily have a situation where one of these guys that has won their first race, like Chastain or Briscoe, maybe they start ripping off a couple wins. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility, especially when you have teams that are figuring out this car, not just on, road courses or not just ovals, but everywhere. With these next few rounds here, where we're going to kind of go into a bit more of the short track portion of the schedule, I think that's going to be really interesting. A place like Richmond next week, I think is probably one of the tracks that I think NASCAR has circled and said, well, I sure hope this plays out a lot better than than it has in the past. And I know I'm certainly going to be curious about that too, but that's going to be kind of another interesting thing to certainly look at there. Eggy boy, I saw your super chat on here too. I saw your first one here. You had the message retracted there, but I think you had another one on this. There it is. Thank you for both of them there, by the way. Who do you think will get their first win next? Reddick, Suarez, or someone else? I will say it's a good question. I think, having discussed this already a little bit and just kind of getting the fresh thoughts from it here, Suarez would probably be the next bet, given how well he had performed at the beginning of this. And Trackhouse is going to be absolutely on cloud nine this entire week, coming into the weekend. And Suarez has really shown a lot of consistency. Unfortunately, today was not exactly their best outing, but at a track like California, where he wasn't traditionally known to be competing that well, it was good to see him get that good performance. So probably Suarez, although I think Suarez might have the advantage in terms of momentum. However, Reddick seems to have a bit more of the consistency. It seems like he's always there, no matter, one time or another. I don't know if if he has as much momentum as it is so much consistency. So maybe that'll kind of play out a bit better. I think that, again, the fact that you had that past relation, of course, with Childress and the Trackhouse effort, it seems like whatever both those teams have figured out, it's helped both of them out. It wouldn't surprise me to see Austin Dillon kind of get in there and pull off another victory. Not his first victory, of course, but trying to get a better run out there. So that'll be one to look at. Nicholas Gray, thank you for the super chat there as well. If you don't like that kind of racing, don't even watch. Kyle Busch, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of racing I think that NASCAR was hoping for. I think there's been a lot of debate about that. I know there's been a lot of debate about that, rather. You think back to last year at Talladega when Tate Fogelman's beat-up truck rolled into victory lane, or off the wrecker, and the comments being made by folks at the track there that that's the way a car should look when it gets into victory lane. I don't think that's necessarily always the case, but I think the kind of racing you had today, where people are just going at it and just absolutely trying to outfox each other. You're going to have some people bumping into each other and knocking each other around, but that's as old as NASCAR has ever been. Aggressive driving, knowing that your car is able to sustain this, and now that we've been far enough into the season, a lot of these teams can understand what these cars can and can't tolerate. Think of Ryan Blaney winning the pole after hitting the wall in practice. I mean, that's outstanding. These other guys that are able to, Suarez being able to bounce back from his struggles there, even after driving on a flat tire for an entire 3-mile course. The fact that he was even able to have any kind of say in a decent finish there at the end of the race before whatever happened to him in the final laps, I think is a big thing to look at too. So yeah, absolutely huge. Tremendous efforts for both these drivers and teams. And I think this is something, the more comfortable these drivers get with the cars, I think, and I hope, and I'm sure NASCAR is hoping as well, that this is the kind of racing that we're going to see a lot more of. I'm not saying like, oh, it has to be like huge crashes and huge pileups. No, not at all. But people actually able to go in there, and if they get passed for the lead, they still have some say in it. They could try to at least catch the guy again and maybe try to get the lead again. That is a kind of racing that is a bit more conducive to road racing versus the ovals, but we've seen such good racing on the ovals lately. Like, again, Kyle Larson's battle with Suarez back at Fontana immediately comes to mind. Or, how Briscoe was able to hold off Reddick at Phoenix. Things like that are hopefully going to be more common. So if the races are not, and again, I think maybe a lot of the old structures that have been in place in order to try to make the racing seem more exciting, maybe those become more out of favor as we go forward here. Like, do we now need cautions at the end of the stages to make the racing more interesting? Do we now need green-white checkers even? I mean, maybe that's something to look in. I mean, certainly it was a factor today. It would have, stunk to kind of have this race end under caution. But maybe, that's kind of the next phase that NASCAR can look at here. I think that a lot of these measures that were kind of put into place were kind of to create more entertainment, understanding that maybe the Gen 6 car in particular was not really that successful in making the racing more competitive. It may have looked better than the car tomorrow, although frankly, I think the racing in 2011 and 2012 was pretty outstanding. But I think that maybe NASCAR is trying to find a way to have their cake and eat it too, that they can have a car that looks cool and that races well. And I think that if we see more of this, it's going to be exciting. I'll tell you what, I'm this much more excited for how these cars are going to be handling Sears Point in a couple of months during that weekend, and especially when we got the Truck Series as part of that weekend too. I think we're going to be setting up for some pretty cool racing out there when we get to that point. And then, of course, Road America and Watkins Glen aren't too much further down the road from that one. So yeah, I'm glad we got a good preview of how these cars handle on the road courses this early. We're going to have to see these next few races if we can kind of keep this going. I'm sure there's going to be boring races at some point. I think that's a big thing that probably is in the backs of everybody's mind. It's like, is it going to be the 600? Is it going to be Dover? Is it going to be Richmond? Is it going to be the Bristol Dirt Race? I mean, you're going to have a race where maybe it's just not as competitive as others, because obviously, even in the sport's best eras, I've watched some broadcasts that are just not nearly as engaging because the racing just isn't that competitive. So that's another one to look at there too. But yeah, I hope that I hope it keeps going. But again, I think it's just kind of something else that needs to be looked at there too. Yeah, and again, the stage cautions in particular, I think that's something that really still does need to be revisited for the road courses. I think the strategy, in spite of the stage cautions, was kind of interesting today. When you had people that were pitting before the stage cautions were coming out, which makes you wonder what value stage points have on the road courses these days. And then you had drivers that were working on different strategies with cautions coming out more like a traditional race there. Strategies are kind of all over the place, and you saw people that were so far out of it that you seemed like they weren't going to be a factor at all. Then suddenly they're just kind of slammed right back into it again, because it was so hard to lose a lap in this race with the track being as long as it is. And mechanical issues outside of course, what happened with Lally was so little for most of this. I think that I don't know if we can expect exactly those scenarios at other road courses. I mean, maybe at Road America, where things are a bit more spread out. Sears Point, I predict, is probably going to have a lot more mechanical issues, because I think you're going to have a lot more cars that are running off course, and the penalty, at least I don't anticipate, is going to be any more strict, so that it's going to be like what it is here at Cota, where you have four wheels off the track and then suddenly it's a penalty there. I do predict that I predict the garage area is going to be a pretty busy place there. So I'm going to be lacing up my sneakers for that one there and looking to follow what's been going on in that race as well. So we'll see what's going on here. My goodness, we got 103 people in here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in here. I'm sure a lot of excited Chastain fans. I'm already seeing a lot of that in the comments here as well. Congratulations to your driver there for sure. So it'll be interesting to see, where he goes from here and where Team Trackhouse goes from here. I think that was a fantastic first win. I love the flag that he was carrying out the window. So that was cool. Steven C., I see your super chat there. Speaking of which, huge Chastain fan, as you probably know. So fitting that he would get a win racing AJ and getting him back. Can we get that Chastain montage now? Yes, you were mentioning about that. I mean, again, I wouldn't rule out, something like that too. I think you and I were talking about this a while back about doing something on like Chastain's career. But this kind of brings back to what I was mentioning earlier. I think we were talking about doing something on like what has happened to this point, and it's already pretty extraordinary. I mean, what has happened since him trying to get it, I remember him having those breakout runs in the Truck Series efforts years ago, trying to get that Xfinity run. I remember walking by him at Phoenix after he landed the deal with DC Solar, and then what happened with that whole thing collapsed. And then, finally getting the ride on the 42 team, only for that to be the last year that team was going to be in existence. He lands this ride with Trackhouse, and this is just where the story is now. I think, the story is still being written. For all we know, certainly the rest of this season. I don't remember if you and I were talking about doing something with the number 42 as well, the history in the sport. I think that came up in a discussion. I know I was discussing that with somebody earlier. I believe it was somebody on the Patreon there as well. But yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I think we're still going to get a lot more stories on that and find out what's coming up there. RD Fox, I saw your comment there as well. Yeah, what was Chastain's flag? Yeah, they actually had a flag. I guess it was stored like in the pit box, kind of like what they had with Hemrick at Phoenix last year. But yeah, it said Ross Chastain's first win. It had the Melon Man logo on it. I'm sure the clips of the victory donuts are going to be online already. But that's when they brought the flag out there. But that was pretty cool. So we'll see on that. Thank you again for the super chat there, Beast of Metal. Stage caution mini rant. I'm almost certain they're there to give local advertisers guaranteed blocks, since they can't interject their ads over the national breaks without taking the entire screen. Yeah, I mean, that's true. Certainly we saw the writing on the wall when there was the caution clock in the Truck Series and other things that were kind of considered for that option, especially when NASCAR was throwing debris cautions under, frankly, pretty dubious circumstances there for many years. It became kind of an open secret to most people that they were actually throwing these cautions for no practical reason at all. I'd still like to believe that you could have, I think it would be much more exciting if the race just kept going, like you showed the graphic on the side and showed who was the top 10 and who's getting the points, and then you just keep going. Like, I think that's kind of the trick, and this kind of dovetails into another project I'm working on, further dissecting the broadcast issues that we had back in Atlanta last week and understanding how you maintain a consistent level of excitement in broadcasting, or at least the best way you can, without going overboard completely, understanding that there is both a ceiling and a floor. I think a lot of people that are particularly enthusiastic about the radio broadcast, even they'll admit that maybe there's some things that are embellished a little bit too much. I always think about, again, when they say the crowd's going nuts, and my brother was out in the stands of the Clash, and he is looking at the other guy. He's like, wait, are they talking about us? Like, we're just kind of standing here watching this. So I don't know, but I think that would be another thing to kind of look at there too. But thank you again for the super chat on that as well. Again, so really, I think this was a weekend I was pretty excited about. Certainly, again, seeing how the cars handle on the road courses. I loved seeing all the road course specialists back out there, especially in the early laps. Even though a lot of them were in the back of the field, it was fun to say, or even to write names like Boris said, or Kaz Gralla and stuff like that out there, and see who's doing what out there. Speaking of which, good job by Gralla's team getting the 25th place finish out there for the money team. I know they had at least a couple incidents out there, but it's good to see them at least finish on the lead lap there, their first start since the Daytona 500. Josh Bilicki in the 22nd spot. We'll certainly get to him in talking about the bit of controversy from the Xfinity Series race where he and Brandon Jones had a bit of a scuffle there for sure. But just looking at other results here from the Cup Series race, Michael McDowell in the 13th spot. And Todd Gilliland in 16th. I saw the comment that was in here earlier mentioning the great runs for Front Row Motorsports. Absolutely have to agree. Gilliland, I didn't really notice him as much, but of course Front Row having a great weekend in general by scoring. Isn't it the second straight year that they've now won the Truck Series race at Cota? Didn't Todd win it last year? And then you had Zane Smith pull it off this season. I know they were a factor in it last year with Kaz Gralla. I don't think Gralla won it. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I mean, Front Row has really figured this Texas track out in pretty short order here, being able to be a factor from one season to the next. Mentioning Ty Dillon in the 20th spot there against Eric Jones in the 9th place there. A good recovery for both efforts. Both had different levels of adversity during this event, but still good to see him get some good runs out there. I'm a little disappointed for Cole Custer. I thought he was fantastic in the Xfinity race. I'm kind of pulling for him a bit because it seems like certainly at the Stewart-Haas lineup, even with Almirola having all the struggles he had last year, and even though today wasn't really his best run of the season, he still had that top 10 streak to start the year. It's good to see Custer trying to kind of catch up and not be the odd man out there at Stewart-Haas Racing, especially now with Briscoe getting his first win. So I think him getting kind of his confidence back a bit and getting a bit of screen time there was certainly fantastic on that end there too. All right. Let's see here. Thank you again for everybody tuning in here today. If you want to stick around, we're going to do some NASCAR trivia here later in the show. I'm going to kind of transition into the Xfinity and Truck Series races here at the same time here and kind of talk about the other stories. Cole Custer, mentioning him a second ago, finished third in that Xfinity race yesterday with A.J. Allmendinger your winner. Same A.J. Allmendinger that was involved in the lead battle today. Austin Hill in the second spot with Noah Gragson and Sam Mayer bringing out the top five. I think one of the great stories from that was Jade Buford finishing the 8th spot. He was our last car feature last week in Atlanta when Buford and the Big Machine Racing team got their first ever last place finishes in a Xfinity Series race. This time around, being able to bounce back and get a top 10 out there, especially when Buford was so good in his Xfinity debut for Bobby Daughter at the Indy Road Course back in 2020. I'm really pleased with how well that team and driver have been progressing. Miguel Paludo had an incident on the opening lap, bounced back and finished in the 9th spot. Ryan Sieg, not known for being a good road racer, finishing in the 11th position there for the CMR Roofing team. A little bit of cold comfort, perhaps, after nearly winning at his home track in Atlanta. Parker Kligerman, great run for him. The Emerling Gase Motorsports team gets their best ever finish, taking home the 12th place run there in a car with very little sponsorship on it, on the number 35 Toyota. Parker was a very late driver addition to it. Actually, Patrick Emerling, the team's co-owner, was the originally listed driver. Kligerman was only announced like midway through the week. So a last-minute effort to a certain degree there. A great run for him. Mario Gosselin's team was outstanding. Before Chastain won the race today, it looked like the big story for him this entire weekend was going to be his near miss in the Xfinity race, driving the number 92 for Mario Gosselin's effort. Led a lot of laps in that one, only to be spun out in that first corner. He definitely figured it out a lot better today. That was certainly the case. But Gosselin's team did really well in qualifying between not just Chastain there, but also Preston Pardus and Alex Labay. Great efforts for those teams. I mean, certainly a lot of road course background for both Pardus and Labay. Pardus in particular from the Spec Miata series, the same one as our friend Brad Perez. Haven't forgot about him. We're going to be talking about him in the Truck Series part of the show here tonight as well. Great runs across the board there. Sage Karam, I thought he was involved in, Karam was involved in the incident with Paludo at the start. I thought he was the one that skated into the 88 car there at the beginning. Was very impressed that he was able to come back and finish in the 16th spot there. Patrick Gallagher had a number of spins there for RSS Racing, still got a 22nd place finish. A very low attrition in the Xfinity race compared to the Cup race. Bailey Curry, unfortunately, with an engine failure. That was a bit of a shame there for sure. Not just the fact that Curry has run significantly better with JD Motorsports than he had last year with Mike Harmon's team. But the fact that he was running a special throwback scheme to his late model for his sponsored Chasco constructors, it was a pretty neat looking scheme. Nice white car with white rims on it there. I mean, certainly not the most complicated paint scheme, but it definitely stood out. Unfortunately, an early engine failure there, dropping him out of the race. Will Rogers seemed like he was going to be your last place finisher in that when he came down pit road just as the 4 was getting towed back in. The 38 car was actually stalled on pit road. However, a good effort by, I guess it was both Rod Sieg's team as well as the Josh Rialm effort, again, since they're running that Toyota. But got Rogers back out there and actually finished under power, although no better than 37th. LeBay with rear gear failure after he qualified 5th, finishing back in 36th. Josh Bilicki in the 35th spot after trading some jabs with Brandon Jones. Tommy Joe Martins revealed on Twitter that last evening, is when I was out at the dirt track yesterday, indicating that Bilicki had actually worked his way towards the front of the field with scuffed tires on that Alpha Prime Racing number 45 and had a great run out there. Bilicki, of course, again, another driver with a very extensive road course background, is really scrapped for, whatever runs he can get. Also, incidentally, a good supporter of the Last Car page there, was very pleased to speak with him on the grid before the Phoenix race there last year. But unfortunate that Brandon Jones was not showing him any respect out there, particularly at the time where Jones had started the back of the field. And was really struggling to kind of climb through the lineup there. It ends up finishing in the 18th spot there, in fact. But Bilicki ends up dropping to the last car on the lead lap, which was all the way back in the 35th spot there after getting spun out on a straightaway. Joe Graff Jr. rounding out the bottom 5 there, with being swapped out with Cole Custer in the 07, just as they had back at Fontana. But luckily, in this case, Graff actually qualifying the car. Qualifying was a bit of a story in this race there as well. There were a couple drivers, both Brennan Poole and Gar Robinson, who were extremely close to getting their cars in the field. Mike Harmon's team just missing the show, and Gar Robinson coming within thousandths of a second of getting Jimmy Means Racing their much-needed first start this season. Unfortunately, they end up going home empty-handed. Hopefully, it won't be too much longer until we see them again. I anticipate it'll probably be Talladega, although I haven't heard anything firm on that side there, one way or the other. But the 52 team still shut out of this season. The 47 with very limited starts this year as well for Mike Harmon's effort, and the 74 not even entered now. So you have that kind of situation there as well. Bubba Wallace was doing a fine job there in the Xfinity race there for a bit. Was battling for the second spot there on a restart. I thought that was really impressive. I think really I was discussing this with Confirmation 07 the other day, that I think really that Sears Point run last year where he had the flat tire and then came back from it and had a solid finish, I think that was a good turning point in his approach to road courses. And with road courses becoming more prevalent, I think that was a fine showing out of it. I know that may sound a little bit surprising out of me, given what I've often said and continue to say about Cup Series guys in the Xfinity Series or lower divisions in general, and we'll certainly be talking about that as well. But I do think that most of us could probably agree that there is a difference between having a Cup Series guy that is entered in an Xfinity race, perhaps that it doesn't really have a chance at competing for a Cup Series win, or is just trying to get some laps under him, or maybe is just struggling with a particular kind of track. Not just Bubba Wallace in this case, but guys like Cole Custer and so forth. I think there's very little difference between that and maybe a guy like an AJ Allmendinger, who is a driver with extensive Cup experience. And yet, could you call AJ Allmendinger like a Cup Series invader in the Xfinity Series? It's a little bit more of a wiggler there in that case. I think in that case it gets a little bit tricky. Guys again like Justin Allgaier is another example, a guy that had a number of seasons in the Cup Series, maybe not as many as Allmendinger, but he's not a stranger to competing against Cup Series drivers. I think that, yes, Kyle Busch does get, and deservedly so, a large amount of the flack for competing in these lower division races. But I think the motivations are clearly different. I think it's being insincere to conclude that it's like, oh, well, he has to do this, or, oh, it costs him money to do it. His reasons that he's doing it are just as compelling as anybody else's. I have a hard time kind of believing that a little bit, especially when that same guy is entering trucks for other competitors out there. I know sponsorship dollars do direct a lot of the attention as to who gets to compete where and who gets what kind of ride or something else of that manner there. But I do think that at the end of the day, it's the sponsors don't understand racing. The sponsors don't understand, the intricacies of it there. That's for the team to make it clear. So I do think that the team is not absolved of any role in when they decide, like, okay, this company is going to sponsor which one of our drivers. This company is going to sponsor, what packages are available or what are we making available to the sponsors. That's up to the team. There's a contract goes both ways. There has to be some kind of an agreement here. It's not just that a sponsor comes in and says, oh, we only want to sponsor Kyle Busch. We're only going to sponsor Kyle Busch. We're not going to sponsor anybody else. We're not interested in it. The team doesn't just sit there and just go, okay, that's it. No. They got to kind of work with it a little bit. You can have negotiations. You can go in there and say, well, wait a minute. We got this guy here. We got this guy here we're developing. If you're interested in Kyle, we can do something with that. He's available for promotional purposes and everything like that. But what about that requires a driver to actually get out there and compete in a lower division? And especially, I think also at the same time, who is presenting this option to the sponsors? Who is making these deals available? I think if you tell a sponsor, it's like, well, okay, you have a couple options. You could either sponsor this driver that I have under contract that is not really proven. He's trying to figure things out. He'll probably maybe finish 15th. I want him to finish in the top 10 because I want him to eventually get into the Cup Series, but he's not there yet. Or you can just sponsor Kyle Busch and be almost certainly guaranteed of winning the race, if not getting shown on screen. I think if you present that option, yeah, they're going to pick their Cup Series driver, especially if it's Kyle Busch. But I think that if you're that's only if you're doing that though. So I think that's kind of where the issue comes in. And this dovetails very nicely into our Truck Series coverage here, where Kyle Busch was entered in the race and did not win the event. After a tangle with Alex Bowman and Stuart Friesen in turn 11, that opened the door for Zane Smith, for old low lane Zane there, to come by and pull off the victory there. Congratulations again to the Front Row Motorsports effort and everybody for pulling it off there. But again, I do think, I decided on this particular day to have a bit of a catharsis about the concept of Cup Series guys in the lower series. And I was really wanted to chew this over because I wanted to understand. I don't think for me personally, and I can only speak to my own belief about this. I can't speak for everybody else about it. But obviously, since NASCAR's changed the rules and there's other people that have been expressing concern about this, that these concerns aren't only mine. So I don't feel like I have to have too much ownership of this. I think for me, the frustrating situation about having a Cup Series guy competing in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, and not in the particular sense of a guy that just needs to turn some extra laps because they're not comfortable with the track. That's in one category. Or a Cup Series guy that kind of, it needs to get some more experience in Xfinity and just lost their ride, period. That's a whole other category too. I think if you're a guy that professes to be the very best out there, that you can just win everything and you're a champion and you can win this, you can win that, and you're just, you're this and that. What is to be accomplished by running in the Truck Series? You don't need the laps. You could figure this out. Kyle Busch in particular won the Xfinity race last year almost in his sleep, driving that Skittles car last year in a race that was half in the rain and half in the dry. He very nearly won the Cup Series race if it weren't for the fact that he was called in for a last-second pit stop. Why on earth is he running the Truck Series race? And then it occurred to me, well, okay, he just wants to turn laps. There's a race there, and he wants to compete in it. And this is where I kind of had the thought. It's like, okay, well, maybe we're going about this the wrong way then. Maybe we're going about this the wrong way. And especially if again, I'm willing to accept new information if it turns out that we're going down the wrong road. It's never too late to change course on something. So, okay, so maybe, especially if we're hearing from these other competitors that are saying, we want Kyle Busch in the field. We want to see if we can actually compete with him, even though at the same time he's running in a truck. The racecraft of a Cup car is now more different from a truck than ever before, and even different from an Xfinity car. But, okay, I guess forget about that. But okay, if you want to have if the Xfinity guys or the truck guys want a guy like a Kyle Busch out there to measure their skills against and see if they're ready, even though it's not like against like. And if the Cup guy wants to get into the series because, hey, it looks like fun, it's happening anyway. And if you're Kyle Busch and you already operate a team, so you can enter a truck. So then I thought, well, okay, why does it have to account for a victory then? Like, he can go out there, he can compete, everybody can measure against it. Why do we have to still fet them as a winner, as if they've accomplished something? I think that was the issue. I think that's the underlying issue. And that was the mentality. And I don't like explaining tweets, but I mean, I know it comes up on here. But in 240 characters, you can't articulate this. But I'm gonna go ahead and explain this anyway, because I think it was a great discussion. And I did have some follow-ups on it. And I appreciate people discussing this mostly civilly. Although, on Twitter, that's not possible at all. But I think I think for me personally, that's the issue. It's when you hear it in the broadcast, like, oh my gosh, can you believe it? Kyle Busch is going to win this Xfinity race. It's like, yeah, can I believe that a guy that is the two-time Cup Series champion, who could probably try out for Formula One if he really felt like doing it, who is a contender one week to the next, who probably figures out these cars so well that races where he is not a factor in it is probably because he's figured out in the first couple of laps what he is capable of doing and knows that he can't get it quite to that point. I don't think that's impressive. I don't think it is. So why do we have to treat a Cup Series driver that's in an Xfinity race and in a Truck Series race, and they go out there and they pull off this victory, the fact that it's treated like any other win? The fact that it's like, oh wow, I mean, isn't this amazing? He's just pulled off this win. And I guess, fortunately, there's now been rule changes where that is less often. And okay, it isn't more than just a couple times a year. But again, I think that's kind of the issue that I have with it, personally. And I can only speak to that. So I'm thinking, and by bringing that up, I'm willing to admit that maybe some of the other restrictions that have been placed on Cup Series drivers in Xfinity and the Truck Series, maybe those weren't well-meaning because they're not addressing the root problem. I think the root problem is that, yeah, the Cup Series guy gets in there and he gets to be like that meme with the guy that finishes in third place and spraying the champagne everywhere. It's like, okay, well, yeah, he won the race, but I mean, what was actually accomplished? You were expected to win it. This is why I wasn't really that impressive and didn't really talk a lot about Kyle Larson going to these dirt tracks here and winning, like, oh my gosh, can you believe he won like 6 races in a row? It's like, I'd be shocked if he didn't win 12 races in a row. The dude's got tremendous skills. He's a Cup Series driver. That still should mean something, that you are one of the best drivers out there. I have a particular, that's the particular issue I have with that particular thing, is that, is the fact that you just got to smile and nod and be like, okay, yeah, this is great. I love that, that Kyle Busch just won this race again. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. I love that Kyle Busch won this Busch Series race. Have we forgotten so easily the dark ages of about the mid 2000s, early 2010s, where guys like, not just Kyle Busch, not to pick on him exclusively, but he's put himself out there in this, so I think it's worthy of criticism. Guys like not just Kyle Busch, but also Kevin Harvick and Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano were occupying so many spots in the field, which, first of all, were one fewer spot that a developing driver could not occupy. And what were the best rides that were out there? And what were the best drivers that were still able to compete for those spots? A lot of them couldn't make it in the Cup Series. A lot of, where's your Dylan Kwasniewski merchandise? Where's things like that? Where's, guys like Tim Schendel or something like that? I mean, a lot of these competitors, they just couldn't get anywhere. I mean, if it really made no difference at all, a lot of those drivers would have made it to the Cup Series, or it's like, oh, okay, they weren't able to compete. They weren't able to beat Kyle Busch. So, okay, I guess they weren't ready. It's like, no. They weren't able to beat Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Carl Edwards, and all these other guys out there. But today, thankfully, it's still a bit of a rarity that you don't have Kyle Busch out there all the time. And now you got guys like this guy right here, Chase Briscoe, who won 9 races in 2020, including one against Kyle Busch, admittedly. But he was winning consistently. That's what sponsors notice. They want to see the driver winning consistently. So yeah, and that's kind of my issue with that. So my original thought was, yeah, I mean, maybe if the Cup guy wants to go out there and wants to actually, be the rabbit that everybody's chasing, then just don't score him. How about we do that? Or how about we treat it like, I mean, you have class racing in sports cars where you have, a guy that's in the top division in, the prototypes. I mean, that guy is not competing. He's not going to be competing in the same thing as the guys in the GT cars. It's like, just because the guy in the prototypes win, okay, yeah, he's going to win the overall race. That's to be expected. But he's not also going to get the trophy for being best of the GT cars, because it's just not the same thing. And I really think people tend to, when this debate always comes up, and it does come up a lot, I think there's a minimizing of how big the difference is. But also understanding, how important it is to teach people to win rather than teaching people how to lose. This isn't a scrimmage where you're just kind of, trying out what you can do against these other competitors out there. This is actual competition. And then it was asked when I suggested this, like, okay, well, what's the point of even them being out there? And it's like, yeah, exactly. What is the point? So, there you go. And again, if you want to compete against Cup Series guys, I still maintain this. If you want to compete against Cup Series guys, guess a good news, folks. The Cup Series cars, as Kyle Busch himself expressed, you can buy them at Walmart. You can pretty much just put one together and get them out there. And better yet, most races in the Cup Series, they don't even have enough cars to fill the field. So as long as you can get approval, as long as you run enough Xfinity races or truck races or whatever, you can get into the Cup Series and you can race against Kyle Busch and you can see if you're ready. And better yet, you'll be running the same equipment. You'll see if you're actually ready to compete in the Cup Series. I think the paradigm has changed. The paradigm has changed. It is different now than it has always been. And we can't use the exact same rules that have always been put into place. I think we need newer solutions and different solutions. And again, I think and it may not sound the most practical with the Xfinity series or the truck series, and say like, okay, well, it's not legitimate. It's not legitimate if you have a driver that wins the race, Kyle Busch, because he's expected to win the race, independent of the fact he didn't win this weekend. That he wins the race, but he isn't credited with the win. They give it to the highest series regular. It's like, well, I think it's illegitimate that you give it to Kyle Busch for winning the race, because it's not like with like. He shouldn't even be in the race. So you can argue illegitimacy all the way, but you can argue it the other direction. I think it's a worthwhile debate, and I think we need to just kind of consider other solutions. And I'm still just surprised that the Cup Series is not viewed as that option. If you want to get a shot at it, there should be a team out there that just hires guys like from the Xfinity series that want to try their chance at it. Try to work something out with that. I don't know. Obviously, you can't just, it's not the cheapest investment. And obviously if you're an open team, you're not going to get a big payoff from it. But what are you trying to do? You're trying to compete against Kyle Busch, and is there really that much of a difference from trying to cobble together a car in the Cup Series versus getting your doors absolutely blown off in an Xfinity or a Truck Series race? I think the Xfinity and the Truck Series are at their best point that they've been in years. I think they've developed a lot of interesting talent. I wouldn't say that every one of those drivers that's in the top 10 in any of those series are immediately ready for a Cup Series effort, but I do think that people that are winning it consistently can pull off one of those wins. So I think that's interesting. But I do think it was a good debate, and I think it was good to kind of discuss it. And the option may sound ridiculous, but keep in mind, these Cup Series guys, they don't get any points for running the Xfinity race. Is it really that much of a stretch that we kind of strip away the fact that they're credited with the win, or that we treat that this win as some kind of accomplishment? It should be expected. It should be surprising when somebody else is competing in it. So yeah, that's kind of where I am on that. I don't want to go too far down that. I've already wasted too much time talking about it. But it'll come up again. I'm sure I'll post another hot take about that. That's going to be a big problem on that as well. But yeah. But that's, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it there too. So, Cup Series drivers, they should be exceptional, but they should be exceptional in their own world. I don't, and again, if guys want to, if they want to mess around in these other series and everything like that, I mean, that's fine. But, I just don't think treating it, like some kind of big thing is great. So I don't want to talk about that anymore. What I want to talk about is our good buddy, Brad Perez. Congratulations to him on that 20th place run in the Truck Series race at Cota. I thought that was fantastic. It was very enjoyable listening to his run out there. I was over the moon to see him get as much well-deserved coverage from the broadcast group there, especially so soon after, I think, what was a very low point for the FS1 group, both of the Truck Series and especially in the Xfinity Series back in Atlanta. I thought that was great to see. Perez finishing in the 20th spot there for the Josh Realm effort. Had his grandmother's name on the roof of the car. I mean, such a great story. I would have loved to be there to catch up with him. I'm glad that he qualified the truck. He got into the show. I'm glad that I didn't have to write an article about him finishing in last place. And I thought it was hilarious when he had the interview where he was on pit road and the crew was working under the truck and he thought he was running in last. I got that link from quite a few of you guys, and I thought that was a hoot. And I definitely had to tweet at that point. It's like, no, you're not. I can confirm you're absolutely not last. By that point, in fact, the pole sitter had finished in last. Sheldon Creed being your last place finisher from that race, which was very surprising. Only the third time in Truck Series history that a driver that won a pole for a Truck Series race finished in last place. Highly unusual for a Truck Series event. And that was the case there too. Blaine Perkins dropping out in the early laps. A lot of drivers in and out of the garage area in about the first 5 or 10 laps there. Dean Thompson, Ty Majeski, other competitors losing multiple laps back there and dropping out of it. Matt Jaskell, very vocal on the radio for an apparent battery issue, ultimately drops out with electrical problems. But yeah, Perkins, Deegan, Jaskell, and Wood rounding out the bottom 5 in that race too. Parker Kligerman, mentioning him in the Xfinity race, he did even better in the Truck Series race. Seemed like he was going to have a real shot at actually fighting Kyle Busch beat for beat there in the race. Unfortunately, end up with a beat up truck at the end, finishing in the 19th spot after leading a lap there. But a fine showing for him there as well. Another huge underdog story in the Truck Series side of it has to be Timmy Hill. They try to enter 2 trucks in the race for the first time. Tyler Hill, running an older Toyota, unfortunately just missed the show, along with Samuel Lecomte and John Atwell. Both Lecomte and Atwell missed the Cota race last year as well, so they're looking to both get their first starts in their careers. I believe Lecomte also missed Watkins Glen last year, so the pursuit of making a start, is still very much a challenge for the both of them. But Timmy Hill did a fantastic job. He was actually, again, another guy that and going against Kyle Busch for a bit of it, beating the Thor Sport trucks for portions of this race. Looked like he was on his way to a top 10, maybe even a top 5 in this. Unfortunately, problems with the truck there in the second half of the race dropped him to the 22nd spot towards the end there, right behind Will Rogers and ahead of Spencer Boyd there. But a fine showing out of that effort. I think the Timmy Hill's team is a real snake in the grass here. They're kind of like Carson Hocevar, that Al Neese effort. There are guys that, they could absolutely be a factor in one of these races and actually pulling off a victory there. So I thought that was a tremendous weekend for those guys. So anything with the Hill brothers, they're doing well. I think that's great for them. On the other end of the field here, working your way back up, Lawless Allen, driver that I featured here on the Last Car site last November, finishing in the 11th spot, new career best run for him. His previous best was 18th at Bristol last year. Great run for him. It's only a very few starts that he's had in his career. Just trying to make the best runs that he can. I believe his debut was actually on a road course at the Daytona Enfield course last year. So very short turnaround there to finally getting some good runs. So I thought that was great to see out of him. Other drivers had all kinds of problems, but still had good finishes. Kaz Gralla in 14th, Chris Wright in 15th. Seemed like they had no shortage of problems from one end of the race to the other. Same thing with Chase Purdy in that 61 truck. But they all finished between 14th and 16th ahead of some pretty fast equipment back there. Alex Bowman, again, I'm not the biggest fan of a Cup guy out there. Certainly had a situation where Stuart Friesen was probably not the biggest fan of having Cup guys out there when he got locked between both Bowman and Kyle Busch there for the winning pass there by Zane Smith. But a different outcome in that case. But again, still with Zane Smith, your winner here, and Sheldon Creed, your last place finisher. And that kind of sums up the racing action from this. So again, congratulations to Brad Perez. Congratulations to a lot of these different competitors out there. I think there are a lot of names that we're getting back in the conversation that really should have been for a while. Guys like Josh Bilicki and Timmy Hill and Parker Kligerman. I'm glad people are talking about him again. And I think Brad Perez is about to get even more fans than he was already picking up last year when he had that great run at Watkins Glen in that ARCA debut out there. So we'll see what happens on that end as well. So yeah. So any other thoughts you guys have here on this? Again, we'll jump into our trivia section here as well. I want to also offer a big round of thanks to you guys for picking up copies of the J.D. McDuffie book that went back on print this week. So it is now currently available. I've actually been very surprised that people have been able to actually get their copies in the mail before I've been able to. I actually ordered some copies to have on hand here, and none of them have come in yet. I'm not actually expected to get them until for at least another week. I don't know what the holdup is. But I'm glad that it's getting that the copies are getting out there and the people are checking it out. I can't thank you guys enough for picking that up and checking that out. So it's now back available in print. The Derek Cope book will be the next book in line there to hopefully get that up. And I'm also looking to do an audiobook version of that in the near future. So that's going to be something that I'm still going to be working on. Got other videos in the works here too. This past week, I was hoping to get the Atlanta broadcast review done this week. I kind of decided to take it a little bit of a different direction. I'm kind of messing with it a bit more. So hopefully that'll probably be the next video that comes out. Still working on some driver reviews and so forth coming up here. So I think that'll be exciting to talk about as well. So we'll go from there. But we'll do our trivia segment here for you guys tonight. And we'll do that for our show this evening. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We still got 84 people in here. Thank you so much for stopping by here. And we'll definitely talk more about the weekend in racing as, again, we wait for the official word. I suppose we haven't received it quite yet from technical inspection for Ross Chastain. I don't know if we're going to wait quite that long this evening, but we'll certainly do the coverage here in the meantime. So we got our late 90s trivia machine out here, so some of the answers may not be the most current answers, but they will be kind of late 90s answers here in the meantime. So the categories, again, are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention in the comments which category you'd like here in the meantime. Categories, again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories. And you can go ahead and jump into the comments there. But yeah, overall, I have to say, I was very pleased with the racing in general this weekend. I loved everything I like with Cota. I like that they put the drivers' names on the pit stalls. I thought that was a really cool detail, especially for the front straightaway. When it seems like for the front straightaway, you can't see a lot of the track. I sense that from kind of some of the videos that people have posted from that area. But I think that was kind of a good setup there where you could actually have the names there. And I like kind of the font they even did there too. So that was a different situation there. Let's see here. Yeah, NASCAR. I think the road course racing was a lot of fun to watch there too. But we're gonna get plenty of it this year. I mean, I'm glad they took the Daytona road course off. I think that was kind of a failure. I don't think that was really conducive too well for the Cup cars, and I think in particular it's got the same problem that the Indy road course has, where it's like, why don't you just run the oval? It's a little bit worse at Daytona because, of course, the super speedway racing there is such a symbolic thing in racing there. I do think it's been abused now by spreading it to Atlanta, but yeah, that's a different one to kind of look at there too. Yeah, when drivers can race, it's always good. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, you can have the guy, you can have a Cup guy. If the Cup guy wants to race in the Xfinity series, if they want to run the Truck series, sure. But why do we have to celebrate the win like they've accomplished something? I think that's the thing that's really kind of gets me. And you hear in the broadcast even where it's like, oh my goodness, can you believe they did this? It's like, yeah. And then people like to make all these trite comparisons to Richard Petty, even though the Xfinity series and the Truck series didn't exist back then. It really is apples to oranges there. Those were cup races. He raced. There was also 60 or 70 races a year or at some point, and you could have as I mentioned, the field fillers thing. You have a field as small as 12 cars, or a field as big as 80 cars. I mean, there was no standardization of anything. So it was hard to kind of transfer one discipline to the other. And really, stock car racing didn't know what even it was. When you just had Darlington out there and they were paving Martinsville, most of the tracks were dirt. And it was just going to be a dirt racing series. Well, it certainly wasn't by the time the 1970s came around. So I think that's a whole other way to kind of look at it there, too. Turbo 14 mentioning the 57 Heinz Pontiac. Yeah, there's a great throwback. They haven't done a throwback to that yet, have they, at Darlington in these recent years? Hopefully we'll see something like that. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know what would be the transition. I mean, people still buy ketchup. I mean, it wouldn't be. That's the kind of thing. That's always a weird thing to me when you have a brand like that that's as notable as like Heinz 57, and you figure like they always want to have. I mean, there's M&M's doesn't need to advertise all the time, and indeed after this season they're not going to be in NASCAR anymore. But people aren't going to forget that M&M's exist, just like people aren't going to forget that ketchup exists. But it's interesting still which sponsors decide to drop out of it. Yeah, exactly, Bean Boy. Yeah, Kyle's 200 wins and Richard Petty's 200 wins. That was a perfect example of just the complete hyperbole. Not going to mispronounce that again. That was involved in a lot of those discussions down there. That they even had to compare us. Like, wow, isn't this incredible? What a time to be alive! Kyle Busch with 200 wins. Annihilating an entire field of guys that are just never going to get a shot at the Cup Series, or at least not in a top flight ride. Now you got all these guys in the Cup Series that are getting top flight rides, like Briscoe, like Cindric, like Christopher Bell. You want me to keep the list going? It sure as heck wasn't like that in 2011. It wasn't like that in 2012. Those guys had to get start and park rides, or they just weren't in it. And I saw this mentioned too. Yeah, the open wheel evasion, that was a part of it too. It was just as much of a problem because the size of the fields didn't change. The number of cars out there didn't change. So when that happens, you're restricting those opportunities. I'm seeing a lot for tracks here on the votes. Beast of Metal, is that what you have there for the top category? I see at least 2, 3, 4, 6. Looks like 6, maybe 7 votes on there. I think that'll probably be the one to talk about there. Oh, the Formula One race. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't even know if I want to touch that one. That's just been a mess. I didn't really follow that, too much there, but certainly some of the news the other day was a little nervous. But there you go. I'm sure there's some other live streamer out there that talks nothing but Formula One, so I'll probably default to that. Yeah, tracks will probably be the one. We'll go ahead and do that there too. I didn't see Alex Bowman's interview, but he looked pretty ill. Was there something else that was going on that I'm not aware about? It sounds like, I know they talked yesterday about Noah Gragson having some illness during the race there, and he wasn't sure about making it through. But yeah, certainly hope he's doing all right there for sure. Okay. Yeah, six with tracks. Next closest teams to 3. Okay, we'll go close the poll. We'll do some tracks questions here to wrap up for this evening. Hollywood's Greatest Comedy is going to be playing tonight there too. I know the Oscars are already underway. I always check that out because I think it's funnier than any of the movies they usually make. So I'm sure we'll get the highlights of that there too. All right, here we go. First question for tonight. What track used to be outfitted with rumble strips? That wasn't what I was expecting. What track used to be outfitted with rumble strips? Well, that's kind of an open-ended question there. Alex Bowman is a hack. Yeah, there you go. I like that Bowman's done that for good cause there with his shirts there. I think that's pretty cool. And a lot of people, there were a lot of those hack shirts over at Fontana. So that was pretty cool to see. I think, especially with him being the last winner there, I thought that was kind of a big deal. Yeah, this is the question. Yeah, what track used to be outfitted with rumble strips? So again, we're talking about late 90s here. So kind of a limited selection here. Unity Raceway, Phoenix, Bristol, Sears Point, Gateway, Wilkesboro, Watkins Glen. Yeah, Phoenix. I don't know. Tough call. Could be anything. You never know. I'm going to check this here in the meantime. Doot. Let me pull this one up. There will be chatter on whether that was a fair move by Ross Chastain to win the race. Justin Marks and Ross Chastain gave the review. This posted by Pockrass half an hour ago. Yeah. Still not seeing, the inspection results here. Probably won't see that for a while there. But that'll be kind of another thing to kind of look at. Allmendinger's certainly not happy. You certainly don't expect it. You don't want a driver to be happy after losing, especially losing that way. But that's what makes it, they're competitors. That's what they do. Let's find out the answer to this. I really don't know. What track used to be outfitted with rumble strips? And the answer is Indianapolis. Wow, Indianapolis. I guess that's true. Didn't they have that where they were trying to keep the drivers off the grass? And they had that. David Land would probably know the answer to this. But Indianapolis. That's a good guess there. Oh, Josh the bassist. Looks like you got it. Anybody else get it? Ooh. Charlotte, Watkins Glen. Oh, no, Brian Hoke. You got it right off the bat there. There you go. Indianapolis. There you go. Alrighty. Okay. Okay, here we go. What is made in the factory that occupies the former site of Islip Speedway? I have to change the pronunciation of that from the field fillers too. What is made? This is kind of an interesting question. What is made in the factory that occupies the former site of Islip Speedway? ISLIP. I believe that's the correct pronunciation, if I remember correctly from the discussion. Yeah, Indy. Yeah, rumble strips in Indy is kind of a scary thought, isn't it? Especially with racing the way it is now. What is made in the factory that occupies the former site of Islip Speedway? Oh, we got 3 guesses for cookies. Wow, is this really common knowledge? I don't know this at all. Face masks, yeah, probably. Cookies. Code red. Ooh, is there? Chug points. Ah. Alrighty. What is made in the factory that occupies the former site of Islip Speedway? All right, cookies, face masks, codes red, textiles, lard, hot dogs, aluminum, cheese. Oh, Slap Shoes already brought this up. I forgot this. Okay. Well, that would explain why everybody got it. And the answer is correct. It is cookies. Cookies is the correct answer. I guess I haven't seen that video. I did see his video on the quickie thing. I thought that was interesting. Alrighty, here we go. Next question. Who won the inaugural 1960 Atlanta 500? Who won the inaugural 1960 Atlanta 500 is the next question. Who won the inaugural 1960 Atlanta 500? So a week later here after Atlanta last week. Yeah, you guys are all over that one there. Okay. Well, good on Slap Shoes for bringing it up. All right. We got guesses for Lee Petty, Curtis Turner, Fred Lorenzen, Fireball Roberts. You see, yeah, we had to put the ooh rule here down this. Ross the Boss Chastain. Got to be happy for him there. Love that Mike Joy is using the nickname, too. I think that's awesome. Who won the inaugural 1960 Atlanta 500? The answer is Bobby Johns. Oh, Jason Toth, you had it right when I was bringing it up. You got it. Bobby Johns is correct. All right, here we go. Next question. What Track's three-story media building met the Wrecking Crew in 1997? What Track's three-story media building met the Wrecking Crew in 1997? Yeah, so we're looking for another Trek name on this one. What Track's three-story media building met the Wrecking Crew in 1997? Didn't Bobby Johns drive for Smokey Yunick? I think so. Yeah, these are good questions. We might be. I don't know if we've done tracks in a while, so good call, you guys, on that one. So we got some good ones in here. All right, I guess this is for Atlanta and Indy and Darlington and Bristol. Yeah, I know I've been critical of the paint schemes that Chastain's had this year. I do think that most of them were kind of misses, even the one he had in the Clash. And yeah, I wasn't crazy about the Dolly Parton one. It was just kind of a mess. But yeah, these last couple have been pretty good. And today's certainly, well, it looked better in Victory Lane. But yeah, it looked cool. I like the iFly paint schemes were really good. I mean, because of course Suarez made them look good last year, so that definitely helped. There's something with that branding that just looks good on a car. I think they've picked some great ones. I love the 99 from Daytona last year. So we'll see. So what Track's three-story media building met the Wrecking Crew in 1997? The answer is Sears Point. Sears Point. I don't even know we had a three-story media building. I mean, we have that drag racing building out there. You know, I mean, the current one is 2 stories, and it's got a roof spot for spotters to go up. It's like a hidden ladder on the second floor that spotters go up on top of. But I'm kind of surprised. Yeah, they would go from a 3-story one to a 2-story one, but I guess it's in a different spot. I mean, obviously, I was never in the old one, but it must have been by the old creaky wooden bridge that people crossed over to go from one side. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. That's absolutely not something I would have guessed. I am looking to actually be back at Sears Point pretty soon with the Derek Cope book. The Copes now have a Trans Am team, it turns out. And that team is actually going to be competing at Sears Point in April, the end of the month. So I'm looking to go out there and touch bases with them and do some more follow-up there on the book. But I'll be interested to see if there's any differences with the way the track looks and everything in advance of the Cup race there in June. Yeah, no, I don't think anybody got that one. I certainly didn't get it. In 97 too. So they did that before they did that. That would be before, that would be the construction of the chute, because the chute was in 98. But that's before the massive they did the Earnhardt Terrace and stuff in like 2001, 2002. When they had the Infineon sponsorship. That was different. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I should have known that, but I did not know that. I'm going to have to ask somebody at the track there about the 3-story media center there in 97. Alrighty. We'll just do one more question here and wrap up here for the evening, but I do appreciate you guys tuning in here tonight. Last question for the evening. How many feet tall is the tunnel into Rockingham's infield? These are really good questions. I don't know this one either. How many feet tall is the tunnel into Rockingham's infield? Feet. So we're looking for a number. We are looking for a number indeed. Just gonna check this here again. In the meantime, yeah, probably no word. Yeah, it's probably gonna be a little while here. I'll still keep it open to make sure you don't get a call on the inspection during the closing of the show like we had at Daytona last year. That still frustrates me. That was ridiculous. Let's see. Okay, we got. I'll read the question again here one more time. How many feet tall is the tunnel into Rockingham's infield? How many feet tall? Okay, we got 71 and 12 and 7 and 14 and 60 and 20 and 15 and 69. Nice. And we got all these other ones. Taller than the Turn 3 tunnel at Atlanta. Yeah, probably. Probably. Yeah, that was pretty bad. 18, perhaps? Biff Gregel. Yeah, that is a good name. I like that one. Yeah, rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins. Didn't they play the Foo Fighters music during the broadcast? I thought that was a nice touch. Sounded like it there. 14.5. Yeah, there you go. This is 14. What was it? The 8 foot, 7'8" or whatever. The one that rips open the top of trucks going through there. How many feet tall is the tunnel into Rockingham's infield? The answer is 11. 11 is the correct answer. Biff Gregel, I think you got it. Death Killer, 11 feet. You're close there on that one. Yeah, I see Biff Gregel, I see Death Killer, and I think they did. They did. Okay, cool. Yeah, that was a nice touch. The Durham Street way. Yeah, there you go. Yes, that's right. See, that was a nice tribute. I'm glad they did that. I think that's the one. I mean, it's always sad when you lose a musician, but I think the greatest thing from any artist, but maybe particularly in musicians, is that that's always going to be out there. That's always going to be out there. So that's the it may not seem like as much consolation at the moment, but that's it's always there to listen to for sure. So there we go. Well, so that will do it for our show here. We're going to go ahead and call it here before we get the inspection results here. Hopefully we'll get those before too much longer. I'm checking Pockers's page one more time. I don't see it on there. But again, so unofficially again, congratulations to Ross Chastain on his first Cup Series victory. Andy Lally with his first career last place finish in the Cup Series. He did finish last in a truck race in 2008. I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier, but that is certainly the case as well. And I do appreciate you guys tuning in here for the show this week. So our next show is going to be, I guess it's going to be Saturday night under the lights after the or is it, wait, are we doing a Saturday night race or are we doing Sunday next week? Well, after either one, if it's Saturday night or if it ends up Sunday afternoon, it'll be after the conclusion of the Cup Series race. And we'll talk about the action at the action track and if it's actually going to be back to the kind of craziness that we saw at the track further back in its history. And we'll be talking about that. We'll do some more trivia and have some more fun on this show. So in the meantime, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. The website is lastcar.info. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, it is patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. Feel free to browse this channel for other videos on NASCAR history and other commentary channels as well. It's on Sunday. Okay, so it'll be Sunday show next week. We'll be doing that, and that'll be a lot of fun. So tune in here. It'll be about 15 minutes after the checkered flag there for the Cup Series race, and we'll do some more chatting here on Behind the Wall. So have a good evening, everyone, and stay safe, and I'll see you next time.